what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan. Over here is Chris.
Hello.
Chris, how you doing today?
Doing good.
Good.
Doing good. Have seen lots of movies, so there's lots to talk about.
We are right in the thick of Academy Awards season with nominations having been announced a few weeks ago. Chris, I know you guys did a Footcandle first, which may have been a show without me.
This is true.
Now, I did listen to this show, the last show we did, or you guys did. You did okay. I mean, didn't have me in it, but it was still okay.
We tried.
I understand. So we are going to be talking about some movies that are in the Academy Award hunt for Best Picture. We'll be doing some reviews of those, as well as another film that we also had a chance to recently catch up with. So we're going to be doing a series of reviews. Or actually, we're going to have 4 films we're going to be reviewing, along with some news items, and then we're going to close out the episode with our recommendation of the episode. That's a part of the show where Chris and I both feature one film that either we've just recently caught up with, or maybe we revisited and we think is worth recommending to you all as something to check out. But from the review side, that's really where we're going to be spending most of our time today, Chris. We've got 4 films to review. One will be the German film that was the winner of the Golden Globes Best Foreign Film, In the Fade. We have The Shape of Water from Mr. Guillermo del Toro. Did I say that right?
Guillermo.
Okay, I'm going to let you say that from here on out.
Fair enough.
Then we have Lady Bird, which is by director and writer Greta Gerwig. And then 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which we will also be discussing and having some, I think, interesting observations to make. So
Okay.
With that, we're going to cover those 4, movie news and recommendation. That's the show format. Are you ready to get started, Chris?
Yes. Are we going to have the drinking game of cinematic vegetables or no?
Yeah, I do agree. In case you missed it on the last episode, Chris coined a phrase that I'm personally a big fan of now. Cinematic vegetables. Those are the films that we're not terribly excited to want to go see, but we kind of feel like we have to. I think you put Steven Spielberg's The Post in there at one point, but I think you've backtracked on that a little bit.
I would backtrack on that, yeah.
But you did say that I think Darkest Hour did still fall into that category.
Absolutely. Very leafy kale vegetable on that one.
I think it's I think we need to get that trending on Twitter very, very quickly. So
fair enough.
With that, let's move into some ones that I do not feel like are at all cinematic vegetables, especially as we go into our first review, which is the German film Golden Globes winner for Best Foreign Film, In the Fade.
Jo, willkommen bei der Familie Schekärji. Sag mal hallo.
Jo.
Hallo. Wir sind voll aus.
Ich hole euch wieder ab.
Chris, the description for In the Fade, as I read the summary, is pretty short and sweet. Katya's life collapses after the death of her husband and son in a bomb attack. After a time of mourning and injustice, Katya seeks revenge. Now, if I had read just that description and said, that's the film, that's what we're looking at, I automatically think of several films in my head that I can think of in the last 10, 15 years where a woman feeling wronged or feeling somehow something has done wrong to their family or spouse or something goes back on revenge. I think Jodie Foster may have had a film that she played that role. A couple others I can think of.
Okay.
Let me just ask you that very short, simple, quick summary of the plot. Do you feel like this film, directed and written by Fatih Akin, starring Diana Kruger, do you feel like that summary pretty much encapsulate the film, or is there more to the film than what that simple little one-sentence description may provide?
There's more. There's just subtext of the people that were involved. I mean, there's a lot of political stuff and very topical things happening today. Basically, it's not spoiler because it happens in the movie. It's early on. The bombing happens. She loses her husband and son, and it's neo-Nazis.
Yes.
And that whole aspect plays a big, and this is happening in Germany, and there's cultures. Her husband was Turkish. So there's a lot of culture clash things going on, dynamics with that. So just a simple synopsis doesn't really kind of communicate it, but I mean, it does let you know that, I will say, to the benefit of the synopsis, it does let you know this is going to be kind of heavy.
Yeah.
And it definitely is it's a hard watch just because it's grueling. It's really grueling.
Well, it is a tough, as you mentioned, of course, as we get into the description more, it does follow breaking into 3 sections of the film, which was kind of an interesting, we can talk about that.
We'll have to talk about that.
Okay. Section, the family, then I believe there was the justice. Then there was the sea.
Correct.
And again, we won't go into too much detail about what those latter sections have to do, but I will say the first section of the film does help explore not only the relationship she had with her family, but then, of course, once that family was taken away from her, some of the ramifications it had on her and other immediate members of her family in that first section. This middle section really goes into more of a courtroom drama. Right. And then the third section is, we're just going to kind of leave that open, but it does take a little bit of a different direction from the first 2 altogether. So I understand the nature of building it into 3 parts, because I do feel like there were 3 sections of, almost like you have people who deal with different stages of grief. I do feel like this explored 3 different phases of how she's dealing with the situation.
Something that
she went through.
I found kind of interesting too, when we're saying 3 different sections, it's kind of the typical screen goes black, white text come up, and it says the family, justice, the sea. What was interesting to me was even the placement of those, because actually the first thing that comes up on the screen is the family, and then you see a good little bit. And then you finally see, after the bombing happens, then you see in the fade. You don't see the title of the movie.
Yeah, the title's good way into the film.
It's an interesting juxtaposition. Normally, you see a title, or you may see a little bit of action, but then you see a title. You never see like a partition before you even see the main title of the film.
That was a little odd.
And I think you'll have to tell me what you feel like in the fade is kind of referencing. But I think everything, which kind of surprised me, because you hear that simplistic description that you read, and then you and I have added a little more meat on the bones talking about how it has kind of topical ramifications today with neo-Nazis and that kind of rise of, violence and politics dealing with also immigrants and Turkish people in Germany. You have all these things that are very topical. You see items about in the news, and then looking at the movie, there's things that I think the more you sit and think about it, you and I've just freshly watched this movie within the past 24 hours, there's more, everything's intentional. And I think having the title come up after that first chapter marker, if you will, I think it's intentional. And I think in the fade is just kind of referencing, it's kind of like you have family that is going away, and then you're fading to what is going to be happening
kind of what I took
where you
from
are
it,
now.
Is that, the tragedy happens in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The rest of the movie is constantly looking backward at that first 15 minutes, either through some home video footage, through stories, through recollections, through emotions. And I do feel like we're getting further and further away from the tragedy as the movie goes on. Her decisions on how to deal with it also change the further she gets away from it. So it's almost, and I do think the title has something to do with her action at the end of the film, which we obviously not go into detail with, but what she chooses to do, or what she chooses almost to do and then ultimately does decide to do, I think has to do more of she has to remind herself what this is all having to do with, what actually started this. And I think that caused her to make a final decision at the end of the film. So I can kind of see that translation of being, the further they get away from the tragedy, emotions are changing or heightened or taking a different direction on her actions.
Well, and they use some home video in this, and they use 2 specific instances, and they kind of call back to them. And there again, it's like you see that and you think it's just, it's her remembering something. And it is her remembering, flashing back to something, remembering a happier time, family time. But both of those instances and what they are discussing come back into play. It's more than just, here's what you could say is a sentimental flashback. And I can't really get into detail with that without spoiling how the movie ends. But I think it's just a very thoughtful. I think it was very thoughtful the way the movie's constructed. It's more than just like a revenge tale or more than a thriller.
Yeah.
Something that I found interesting too was we do spend some time. You talked about the justice portion. We spend a lot of time in court, and just the simple way the courtroom. Now I don't know. I've never been to court in Germany, but just the way the layout of the courtroom is set up. I'm assuming it's fact. I don't know, but I'm assuming it's fact. And it's just very different from the way American courtrooms are arranged. You have people testifying, but then it's like they're out in front of a bench. They're not facing the people, and they can turn around and look at the people.
Yeah, it's like people all talking to them. And the courtroom is a much more conversational. It's not as much this side talks for several hours and then it flips to the other side. They're interacting with one another. There's actually three parties involved. There's the government filing the lawsuit or the actions against the people accused of the crime. There's the defendants. And then there's the plaintiffs, which is what she plays the role of.
Right.
So she's right there with her own lawyer, too, and they're all kind of around this courtroom.
And you have a panel of
the judges.
I'm assuming judges, so it's not just one judge. It's like a panel of judges. It's just very interesting.
I will say I liked the film. I thought it was really well done. I was very happy to see that it did not follow the typical Hollywood path I was expecting it to. And that first half, I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to get to a point where she is going to have a gun. She's going to go and she's going to try to hunt down these people. And there are elements of that where it starts to skirt with that, but it's a much, much more realistic view of what somebody could possibly do. Without getting too far to the end, it does take a little more turn towards the end, I think, where it starts to go down that expected path a bit more than maybe I would have liked to see it end with. But overall, I thought it was a much more realistic view of someone not only dealing with real authentic grief. I mean, I really thought Diane Kruger's performance, especially the way she handled someone going through this much grief and anguish, was really, really good. I thought she was incredibly strong in this film.
Even if she wasn't speaking, just her facial expressions, how tired she may look. It just was very effective.
Very
you can see why Cannes awarded her Best Actress for this film. You can see why they felt moved to do that.
I bought the love she had for her family is very genuine. I thought the scenes that we do see her with her son and his husband are very natural. But you can understand the relationship pretty quickly in just a few scenes they give you. I like the non-Hollywood take on the idea of someone seeking revenge for their family that they've lost. I think there was some interesting cinematography at points too.
Yes,
a couple of moments where some really interesting shot selections that there was one in particular during the courtroom scenes, a shot looking down as she's approaching the witness table or desk. It was a nice, interesting shot. There's one at the very end, actually the last shot of the film, where the camera does a really interesting kind of complete flip motion into the sky and into the water.
Yeah, it inverts it. It's kind of like instead of sky, then ocean, it flips.
It goes, it pans up from something view on the side of the ocean, and all the way around to all of a sudden now the water raises from the top of the scene down.
Right.
It was just interesting. Some nice choices, I think, with the camera work to make it just not as traditionally framed and shot.
And there are things in the courtroom, very, very cognizant of faces. You see Diane Kruger's face in the background, slightly out of focus, and in the foreground is somebody giving testimony about the bombing. And, she is stating facts, but it gets more and more upsetting, the facts that she is stating.
Very tough
And
scene.
you see her and you see Diane Kruger in the background, and it's just really interesting framing, camera work, and then it was just, like I said, very well plotted out. And it kind of stood out to me, not your typical Hollywood blockbuster kind of like reaction shot.
Sure.
It was, and there were a lot of long takes and, patience with stuff.
Yeah. Well, what did you think of the film? I kind of said my opinion. I liked it. I thought it was a good film. It's a one-timer for me. I don't need to see this one again. It's a tough watch.
Yeah.
But I do think Diane Kruger's performance really just made the film. It would have been a much lesser film if you didn't have that strong performance in there to carry it. But so I generally liked and felt the film was really effective. What do you think?
I liked it as well. I think you and I are on the same page. It definitely, it's not one I am eager to return to.
Right.
But I would say a second viewing may kind of link in my head a little bit about more why the director made some choices that he made.
Okay.
Kind of talking with how he divided into sections, reading more into some of her actions and how the flashbacks may have played more of a role. Just there's a lot there. I could see how it could reward a second viewing, but it'd be tough to have to do it. Yeah.
The only thing I'll say criticism, although it was a character that I think provoked some, I hate saying levity because it was certainly not a humorous situation, but the defense attorney defending the two neo-Nazis that a little more caricature-ish, a little more of a character that I don't feel like really fit with the rest of the film. And it seemed a little more, and of course it kind of had some moments, I hate saying humor, but just people just chuckled at his mannerisms and his style. And his appearance even was a little more just accentuated. It was
kind of a little bit, more than what you would have thought about being kind of on the nose. I mean, he looked like a Nazi. I mean, I guess is basically what it was. And some of the ways he would deliver his arguments, you were just kind of like, okay, maybe a little, but, not being familiar with the situation in Germany. And these cases like this have happened.
Agreed.
There was some information on the screen at the end of the film, how many people in recent years have died from attacks like this. So, it seems kind of hyper stylized to you and I, but maybe in actuality, it's how it is.
It was just the one element of the film I thought
I could see that.
a little bit out of place, a little more heightened characterization that didn't work as much for me.
Okay. I see what you're saying. I don't think I had as many reservations about that.
Okay.
Or I was slightly less bothered me maybe slightly less. Not that it bothered you, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
But since you bring that up, like a little slight hang up for me, and I'll try to dance around spoilers. But here again, it kind of centers on some cinematography and a choice of shots. I will say our Katja, Diane Kruger, she has gone to the beach, and there's a shot where it kind of booms up, hands up, and you see her kind of down on the ground, and it's kind of from the perspective of a tree. It's kind of up in this tree, and some things happen around that, and you think that she's made a decision. And then when that decision is second guessed, I kind of felt like I was being maybe played with a little unfairly.
Okay.
Like, dangling something and then ripping it away from you.
Sure.
But
I can see that.
How did you feel about that?
I didn't get that same feeling.
Okay.
I'm even trying to recall exactly the moment you're speaking of. I do know that last third, I do feel like it was the most, of all the parts of the film, it was the most traditional revenge film part. And it did ratchet up the tension, which I think was fine. I think it did an okay at balancing the tension moments. The entire final third I thought was pretty tense. I thought, just not knowing exactly what was getting ready to happen.
Sure.
And I do feel like there was some guiding you down to feel like something was about to happen or somebody was going to take an action and they didn't. It didn't bother me, but I know that the tension was definitely high in that last 15, 20 minutes for sure. And I think it was very intentional. I think that was, again, it never got to the point of it being a gun-toting, revenge-seeking female, very stereotypical.
It was not to make this situation something like a Liam Neeson movie. It wasn't to make it look cool or to make it stylized.
Absolutely not. It was very, very realistically done. So didn't bother me, but I could see maybe on another viewing I'd keep an eye out for that. So overall, I don't have any other really criticism. I thought overall it was a good, fine film. Well done, probably well deserving. I'm surprised that maybe it didn't fall into the Best Picture nomination field for Best Foreign Film.
I think it had been on the short list, correct? Germany had put it up there for the short list, but didn't make the
I personally think Diane Kruger probably could have pulled out even a squeak by nomination for just Best Actress, because I do feel like this is a really strong performance. I have not seen all the Best Actress nominated performances, but I can think of one or two off the hand that I could easily see swapping Diane Kruger with, being pretty happy about that. Sure. So I say it's worth seeing for her performance alone. but also along with that, it is a good, well-made film as well. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay, good. So that's In the Fade. It's been out across the other countries since last summer. I think it came to America in the last couple of months, playing very limited release, if at all, but it should be available online, I would have to guess, relatively soon. So I would say this is probably one you'll be able to find in the springtime of 2018, somewhere online for rental or purchase, and we do recommend checking it out. In the Fade, starring Diane Kruger and directed by
Fatih Akin.
Fatih Akin. Right. Great. Now let's move on to some quicker reviews. That was kind of more of our main feature review, but we do have 3 films that we want to talk about that are all Best Picture nominees that have come in the last couple of months that we haven't had a chance to sit down and review yet. And all 3 of them, again, nominated for Best Picture along with other awards that they're up for at the Academy Awards. So let's start with the first one, starring a Miss Sally Hawkins, who has been talked about quite a lot on our show in past episodes with several films we've reviewed of hers. And the film is The Shape of Water.
She deaf?
Mute, sir. She can hear you.
You clean that lab, you get out.
This may very well be the most sensitive asset ever to be housed in this facility.
You may think that thing looks human. Stands on 2 legs, right? But we're created in the Lord's image. You don't think that's what the Lord looks like, do you?
This creature is intelligent, capable of language, of understanding emotions.
So with The Shape of Water, Chris, I'll just jump right in and say it. I was extremely excited for this film.
Okay.
Mainly because I love the aesthetic behind it. I love the production value. I love this 1950s, kind of a little bit of a throwback science fiction, B-movie horror film to it, but couched with a love story with some really good actors. I'm a big Michael Shannon fan. I like Sally Hawkins. I think she's really strong as well. I really like Richard Jenkins. All the pieces were kind of coming together. I'm like, this is going to be good.
Sure.
And overall, I'll say I thought it was good. I didn't love it. I didn't walk away in love with the film as I hoped to be based on all the stuff I'd built up in my head. And I can all stem it down to really one core reason why this film just did not work for me as much as it could have. But I will say there were a lot of positives to it that made it, I do think, a Best Picture nominee. And I think it's worthy of being in that category.
Sure.
There was one glaring element to this film that just kept me from loving it. I'll mention it in a little bit, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. How did you feel about this film in general?
I liked it as well. I was excited because Guillermo del Toro, he always makes visually interesting films. You and I both seen Crimson Peak.
Yep.
We've both seen Pan's Labyrinth. Stuff like that over the years. Yeah, I wasn't as big on Pacific Rim. Wasn't as big on that.
But you still have to admire the production value around the world he was trying to build.
And so that's when the storyline, the plot description. There's a top research facility in the 1960s. A lonely janitor lady, played by Sally Hawkins, strikes up a relationship with this amphibious creature that's being held in captivity against its will. Oh, and by the way, Sally Hawkins is mute.
Yes,
so
there's that too.
So yeah, just kind of like it's like a Creature from the Black Lagoon type story mixed with
kind of a Beauty and the Beast,
type story. Yeah.
And again, that's all the elements that really got me excited for the film.
Sure, me too.
I think the visuals were stunning.
And the cast.
The cast is great. The visuals are stunning. It's got a little bit of elements of, metropolis kind of structures and buildings and just really tapping into the 1950s sci-fi vibe with some of the actual makeup of the facility that they're in and the places where the testing is going on. It's just some really great visual looks to everything. And I loved what they did. Then you flip and go to the main character's home, her apartment, and the apartment of her next door neighbor. And that was a completely different visual style and dynamics to it, which was a nice kind of interplay between those two environments.
Since Alan and I, obviously we're cramming a lot of movies in. So disclaimer, we have kind of discussed some of these in the background because we couldn't hold off.
Yeah.
And I think our shared, because I think you and I both like this film, but where we kind of hit the shared, not disappointment, but one thing we'd be like, yeah, they basically had a lot of ideas, which is awesome, but they were trying to cram too many storylines, too many threads in.
Yeah.
And I think, tell me if I'm missing any.
No. You're exactly right.
We have the storyline of course, Eliza and the fish man, the amputated man. Okay, so that's one. Then we have her coworker, who's played by Octavia Spencer. She's obviously African American. We have that thread of, civil rights and a woman's place in the workplace, an African American woman
in her relationship with her husband,
okay,
and just a lot of that going on with her.
So we have that.
Yep.
So then we have Michael Stuhlbarg, who plays somebody who's a doctor in the lab,
a researcher,
a researcher. And he has some backstory going on with him. He ends up kind of helping her a little bit, but is conflicted. So we have his kind of storyline thread and things that are going on that have some Cold War aspects of the Cold War stuff going on with that. Okay. Then you also mentioned Michael Shannon, who we both like a lot. He gets to play the villain.
Yeah.
But there's things going on with his domestic life and family life. So...
there's one more, Richard
Jenkins. I've forgotten about Richard Jenkins, who plays the neighbor of Eliza, Sally Hawkins' character.
Kind of a career issues he's facing. And
career issues that he's facing, and also
his sexuality. And love life,
Right, and the time period that and how that's a challenge for him. Okay.
That's a lot.
That's a lot going on.
Yep.
And all of those storylines you have said, very interesting, but the shame of it is it just makes... it's too much.
Everything is so slightly touched on, like so slightly fleshed out.
Right.
No one storyline is given a lot of breathing room to really grow and become interesting for me. I agree. I wrote down in my notes like many great characters and many great potential subplots. Just too many to actually put into one film and make anything really meaningful.
And with the detriment being the main thing we think we're supposed to be focusing on is Eliza the janitor and Fishman.
And their relationship. Which I agree, I thought was the skimpiest part of the film, unfortunately. And that's why so many of the beats later in the film, especially a speech that Sally Hawkins, Eliza gives, that I think is an extremely well done speech she gives to Richard Jenkins. But you still walk away from it saying, yeah, it was a great performance of a speech, but I didn't feel anything because I don't feel like this relationship between her and this creature ever got anywhere.
Yeah, there's
fleshed out.
You see initial meeting, you see a few exchanges, but not enough to like really build.
I never once bought that those two actually had any connection.
Right.
And for the rest of the film to really hit me emotionally, I have to buy into that. I don't. I actually bought into the realism of more of these subplots around it than I did the core story. So I agree. If they could have scaled back some of the characters and some of the subplots and focused a lot more time on developing the core relationship, I think the ending scenes would have been so much more powerful and dramatic than they were. As it is now, it's a beautiful film to look at. It's a beautifully made film. There are some fascinating, interesting characters there. Just they're not utilized to the full capacity, and unfortunately, they're all taking us away from this core relationship we should really be focusing on and learning more about, and we just don't. So.
Yeah.
That's what keeps it from being a great movie in my mind. It's a very good movie, and I think for the aesthetics alone, it's worth the nomination. But I do feel like the emotional impact of the story was really, it's just really less impactful than it should have been.
Sure.
Okay. Shape of Water, still recommend to check it out, but just be warned that Chris and I do have some misgivings. We think things that hold it back pretty significant.
And I think because the look of it, the production design, the costumes, all that stuff, if you are interested in seeing it, probably try to see it in the theater because seeing it on a big screen does add a lot.
I will say the opening credits sequence is kind of an underwater fantasy sequence. Very well done. So it had me set in a really good mood for the film when it started. All right, that's The Shape of Water. Let's move on to our second one, another Best Picture nominee that we have not had a chance to speak about, the two of us, and that is by actress, but also now officially filmmaker, director, and writer, Greta Gerwig. The film is Lady Bird.
We're afraid that we will never escape our past.
Whatever we give you, it's never enough. It's never enough.
It is enough.
We're afraid of what the future will bring. We're afraid we won't be loved.
You can't do anything unless you're the center of attention.
We won't be liked, and we won't succeed.
I want you to be the very best version of yourself that you can be.
What if this is the best version?
So, Chris, with Lady Bird, we have Greta Gerwig, who is an actress that we've followed and seen in many movies before. She's a great actress on her own, but this is her first time directing a film. She's co-written films with her husband before and been involved in other production work, but this is the first time as a true director.
Standalone.
And standalone writer of a full film.
Right.
Lady Bird stars Saoirse Ronan as someone who is Lady Bird McPherson, is the name she goes by, but you could pretty much say is a stand-in for Greta Gerwig when she was growing up and in this same time period. Laurie Metcalf as her mother, Marion. Tracy Letts as her father, Larry. And then you've got several other characters. Can I go ahead and say for the record, Lucas Hedges, I believe he may be the independent film prince of 2017-18. He was in Manchester by the Sea. He's in Lady Bird. He's in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. He is the independent film prince right now. I'm crowning him that.
Okay. But the guy that's like lurking in the shadows who's trying to take over
is the other one in this
Timothy
film,
Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet.
Who's also one of the main leads in Call Me By Your Name.
That's right.
So,
Timothy Chalamet is trying to unseat Lucas Hedges as independent film prince for this year. But a lot of great characters, a lot of great actors. I will say with this film, Chris, just my initial reaction is I think this is a very good movie. And I think it's entertaining. And I think it's well made, and I think it has some interesting family dynamics it talks about. Did I feel like it was Best Picture nominee? I'm happy it's squeezed in there just because I think it's good. I think we need to have more female representation in directors and in the Best Picture field. But was it a terribly strong movie? I felt like it was a little more slight than I think a lot of critics are giving it the notice for. Again, I enjoyed it. I think it probably speaks to maybe other demographics and audiences more than it did me. This is a film that's kind of like the films we've had throughout the decades, like a Say Anything, like a film that just kind of hits certain generations and certain demographics of people a certain way, and it just really connects with them. It didn't connect with me as much, but I don't want that to be any slight to the film. It didn't speak to me as directly as I think it did a lot of other critics and audiences.
Right.
But I do feel like it was a good film, very well made, very well acted. I just didn't have the takeaway love for it and connection to it that I think a lot of others do.
Well, and I saw Lady Bird late in the game.
Okay,
and,
I did too.
Expectations, the big cloud, the
tough.
devil of expectations. So I'd been, heard all the good things about, a lot of critics were hailing it. And so when I finally saw it, I was kind of on the same page with you. I like it. But one of the things I think I can kind of narrow it down to, I know Greta Gerwig from things like Frances Ha, Funny or Mistress America, both films which I really like. I think I've actually recommended to some of my choices here on the show. And so this had comedic elements in it, but it wasn't as funny as I thought a Greta Gerwig written and directed movie would be. Mm-hmm. It still had some funny elements, but it was more focusing on the relationship between Lady Bird and her mom, played by Laurie Metcalf, which was very well explored and examined, but it's a tough relationship. Mm-hmm. So the movie was a little bit heavier in that respect than I thought, than I expected. I thought it'd be a comedy and that would it'd be more of a coming of age with, kind of a rough mom thrown in. But no, the rough mom and the relationship with the mom is basically the central, for me, the central thing of the whole film.
It is.
And so, it made it not as much of a coming of age, but, dealing with a rough mom where you and her don't see eye to eye. Still interesting, but I kind of struggled with it a little bit because of expectations, and it wasn't as funny as I wanted it to be, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, the lack of a lot of deep comedy didn't bother me. It had some really great, funny moments.
It did.
And I think overall it was a good, if they call it a comedy, I wouldn't call it a comedy. It's just, it's definitely more on the drama than it is comedy. That didn't bother me as much. I think it's just, again, it was I'll tell you what, probably if I had to pull away in my criticism, the thing that just maybe left me after watching the film just not feeling a real connection with it as much as I thought. I do feel like the last 15 minutes or so, there's a lot of skipping in time. There's a lot of things moving forward.
It feels kind of rushed,
I felt
maybe?
it really rushed in that last 15 minutes, where I felt like the first hour 15 were so deliberate, and we were just really getting to know the family, getting to know the dynamics, getting to know her as a character. Then that last 15 minutes, it was like boom, boom, boom. Things are happening and things are moving forward. And it didn't build that connection with me that I actually felt like I had a deeper connection earlier in the film. And by the end, I'd lost a little bit of it. I felt like I didn't know these characters as much anymore because things were happening much quicker. Things were happening really fast. Again, I'm saying on the record, I think it's a very, very good movie. And I think, amazing that it's a directorial debut from someone who's been historically known as an actress. It's great outcome of first directorial debut like that. I thought Saoirse Ronan was good. I thought everybody acted fine. Laurie Metcalf's getting a lot of attention for the mom. I think she was really good in that role.
I think Laurie Metcalf was really good. And if anything, that was something else that kind of surprised me. Not that, Saoirse Ronan was good, but she was, to me, so overshadowed by the performance of Laurie Metcalf. Not that, but it was like, and I guess that's the point. The mom overshadows the daughter. You see how there's a lot of friction there. But I was so, I guess, distracted by how good Laurie Metcalf's performance was that I couldn't really pay attention to the performance that Saoirse Ronan was giving.
I'll tell you that. I know Laurie Metcalf is getting a lot of attention and got nominated for her performance, but I'm disappointed people are kind of overlooking the father. Tracy Letts, I thought was so good in this.
Well, it's just screen
Such
time.
An underplayed, he's got less screen time, and it's also a very underplayed role. He's not the loud, boisterous, opinionated guy, but he's a really good character. And I love the moments he was on the screen in this film, especially following him on a career situation, which was both humorous and just devastating at the same time to watch him go through. But yet still keeping a very good spirit about himself. It was just a really nice character to have in the film. I liked him a lot. And then I mentioned Lucas Hedges as kind of one of the two boys that she has a relationship with during the course of the film. And then we get Mr. Timothy Chalamet, as you mentioned, as the other one. Both of them I thought were fine and good. I think they're both great young talents that we're going to see in a lot more movies going forward.
Well, I was singing the praises of Laurie Metcalf and just kind of dissing Saoirse Ronan. But I will say, when I look back on the moment of the film, that unlike the opening scene riding in the car that was spoiled by the trailer that I wish I hadn't seen.
That's tough.
Great scene, but spoiled by the trailer. Something that I wasn't expecting that was awesome. And it involves Saoirse Ronan and Lucas Hedges. Kind of my favorite scene of the movie that I look back, and it's what kind of elevated it from me just saying, oh yeah, it was okay, to I was like, okay, that's a special moment in this film that I haven't really seen something like that before. It was really good. She's working at a cafe and he comes to talk to her, and they have a moment where they kind of have this discussion after they've had some rocky relationship, or their relationship's been a little rocky, and that moment I was like, okay,
I know what you're talking
that's
about.
like an original voice of Greta Gerwig writing this scene. They're performing it completely believable. May have gotten a a little dusty in the theater.
It's true.
So that was just a really solid moment.
I agree with you on that. That was a good standout scene as well. So Lady Bird, I liked it. That was good. I know there's a lot of people and some critics who just really love the film, and that's great. I can totally see why you would. I have no real criticisms other than I wish that last 15, 20 minutes was not so quickly paced and didn't feel like I was skipping through so many important steps in this character development. But otherwise, that was a very good movie. I think it definitely speaks to a generation. It definitely speaks to a portion of our population that they can just really relate to her experiences and the time period and everything else. I think it's a good film. Very, very good. I'm happy to see it on the slate of Best Pictures. Do I think it will win? No.
Probably not.
But am I happy to see it up there? Absolutely. I think it's a good representation for this style of filmmaking. So, great. All right, so that's 3 of the 4 we're going to review. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to do the 4th review, which is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Then we're going to do some quick news items and our recommendation for the episode. So stay tuned to Footcandle Films. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Local authors, illustrators, and storytellers come together to create Storytime Station at The Mesh. Storytime Station is a video podcast that works as a virtual storybook. Each show features a new children's book and new reader. So gather the whole family to listen, learn, and laugh at Storytime Station on themesh.tv.
I'm Angela Hayes' mother.
So, Mildred Hayes, why did you put up these billboards?
My daughter Angela was murdered 7 months ago. It seems to me the police department is too busy torturing black folks to solve actual crime.
The hell is this?
Dixon, I'm in the middle of my damn Easter dinner. Sorry, kids.
I know, Chief, but I think we got kind of a problem.
Sunshine beating on a good time.
I'd do anything to catch your daughter's killer. I don't think those billboards is very fair.
3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Kind of
quite the title.
Quite the title. But it is written and directed by Martin McDonagh. We have spoken about Mr. McDonagh before because In Bruges was a film that you and I both really liked years ago when it came out. I know he did another film in between.
Is it Seven Psychopaths?
I never saw that one.
Okay.
So not familiar with his second film or the film that followed, but In Bruges was really one I connected with and enjoyed. In Bruges was a film that had a very dark sense of comedy to it, had some very troubling moments and some violent moments, but it also had this undercurrent of comedy. I kind of look at it when I watched 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, that it was taking that same formula and amplifying it even more. Just this dark comedy. I mean, it's still kind of listed in a lot of places as a comedy. And yes, it does have some humorous moments and humorous characters, but the darkness has definitely been amped up even more so from his first film that I was familiar with. So, Chris, I'd love to get your thoughts on this film because there's a lot of divisiveness out there about this film.
Right.
It is nominated for a lot of awards, but yet there's also a lot of people saying, they just really don't care for this movie and the way it tries to balance this tone of comedy and grim darkness to it. And I'm just curious, how did you do with this whole balance of this film?
I can totally see people and see their complaints and understand why they would say tone was all over the place and you can't have moments of comedy and then switch to something that's just really dark and upsetting, or even sometimes characters within the same scene. Frances McDormand plays, her daughter has been raped and murdered.
Mm-hmm. Before the film even starts.
She has an abusive husband who she's no longer with. There's a scene where she's making jokes and they're, kind of confrontational, and then they shift and they're sharing sadness over their daughter having died. And then they go right back to, it's just, there are a lot of, it's like you're constantly shifting gears in your car, or shifting gears for the movie to move forward or back. Jarring.
Yes.
But I think once I sat with it after the movie was over, even though it doesn't seem realistic, it actually, I guess, for me, seemed realistic. That life is not as simple as having one tone and maintaining it. No. And sometimes movies have tones that are all over the place and they don't work. But this one, for me, I felt like was intentionally jarring on purpose. And so the shifts in tone worked. Was the humor troubling sometimes? Yes. Often,
I think it was meant to be.
Often it was.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it was meant to be, and he wanted you to, the Martin McDonagh, the director, writer, I think he wanted, I think he intended it that way. So,
well, I was fine with this film. I didn't love it. I think there were some elements to it that just didn't work as well for me. But it wasn't the tone. It wasn't the shifting of themes.
Okay.
The way I looked at this, I think the thing that gave me more appreciation for this film is if I stood back and looked at it more as almost like a Southern Gothic tapestry of different interesting characters and their lives intertwined. I actually think that. The main storyline, Frances McDormand as Mildred, who put up these 3 billboards with messages basically to the local police, basically indicting them, condemning them for not doing more about her daughter's murder. That's our, quote, main story, but yet I actually think that storyline probably got the least amount of development for me. It was all these other interesting characters around the side. So if I step back and look at the film more as this Gothic comedy / tragedy of these characters and their intertwining lives, that to me is That's interesting. That's the way I looked at it, and I got a lot of kind of satisfaction from the film.
Gotcha. But
I do feel like Mildred's storyline herself was probably the least developed and least interesting after a while, because we have a lot of interesting side characters. I feel like Caleb Landry Jones, who plays Red Welby, who owns the advertising company that put up the billboard. There's a whole little path for him there, a little storyline with him. You've got Sam Rockwell as Dixon, one of the police officers. He's got his own little storyline. Mm-hmm. You've got Woody Harrelson as Willoughby, the sheriff, and his storyline. It's just, there's all these interesting little stories going on with these interesting characters. Yes, Mildred's story kind of is the hub, but there are all these interesting spokes. And if I look at it more as this tapestry of characters and how their interactions affect one another, I'm much more satisfied with the film. If I'm looking at it as a mother who's trying to get attention and trying to build a case about her daughter's murder, it wasn't as effective to me. So
it's interesting because the way you're describing it, in my mind, what's kind of being set up is it's kind of a mashup between Shape of Water and In the Fade. Mm-hmm. In the Fade, you have the mother who is with revenge, which mirrors Mildred and Three Billboards. Yes. Then you have all the character thread problems that were in Shape of Water that are kind of here in Three Billboards. The difference for me is I see what you're saying, but it all worked beautifully for me, because if it had been just Mildred, it wouldn't have been interesting.
No, and I wasn't looking for it to be just her.
Right. Yeah. But I think there was just enough of Mildred for me, and then the other characters weaving in made it unique. It really gelled and worked as a whole. And like you're saying, a Southern Gothic tragedy, and it was like it was written by Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. You have the main Mildred character, but then you have all these other characters that come in and play, and it just somehow, I think that from the very outset, you see that she's been on revenge, and you kind of see what that does to her and kind of what good comes out of trying to seek revenge. Yeah. And it's like, and I think the other thing that's tough for people is in this film, you feel sorry for Mildred, but she's not a nice person. She's very bitter. She has moments where she is tender towards certain people. She does have some redemptive moments or scenes that she's like a horrible person, but she is so embittered and so overcome by frustration with things not being done about her daughters, which you can understand, but at some point it's just really, I don't know. And seeing people work through that, Sam Rockwell's character with racism and kind of some other stuff that's going on with him. Yeah, there's somehow just the amounts and the weaving together did work for me.
It worked for you? Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of summed this film up as, to me, it was many, many fascinating, interesting characters, these smaller pieces together. When I rolled it up together into a film, it wasn't the sum of its individual parts. It was it kind of lost something as a total film, even though I thoroughly enjoyed some of the characters in the film and wanted to flesh out their storylines more. But I get it. If I look at it more of this whole idea of how one situation has these ripple effects on different characters and the impacts and the way their choices all impact one another. If I look at kind of that Shakespeare Gothic tragedy way, I find it more interesting. But it's just something about the film just didn't roll up to me as like a film that I feel like universally worked on its own as a whole. It was just a combination of a lot of really interesting parts. So there are some questions I will have to ask you off the mic because they are more spoiler driven, but a couple plot points I'm still wrestling with that I don't feel like made as much sense.
Just where the movie ends, that for me, I feel like my interpretation of it, without there again dancing around spoilers, not going to try to ruin it for anybody, but I feel like it's hopeful.
No, I do
and
too.
I think, but it's ambiguous, and that to me, how it ended, I really liked how it ended.
I did too,
and that made me kind of, I liked it.
There's been a lot of talk, and a lot of the critics I've read that didn't like the film, did not buy a shift in a character that happens towards the end of the film, probably in the last third of the film. And I know exactly what they're talking about. Of course, I'm not going to say which character it is, but a certain character that we are led to believe is a certain way for a majority of the film does have some change in the way they are either helping or not helping the situation towards the end. And a lot of people say it's really an artificial shift and change. I didn't believe that at all. I actually felt like the shift was very much warranted.
I did too.
From 2 or 3 key things that happen right before this person goes through this change. A letter he reads. I'm just going to leave it at that.
There are some surprises that happen that I was not expecting in this film, and we're not going to ruin.
Sure.
But one that happens pretty early on, or about maybe midway through.
Has a huge impact on
it does.
This character.
And there are 3 billboards, but I believe there are also 3 letters. And the letters that are read in the film, and they're addressed obviously to some different people. Those convinced me of what needed for things to happen the way they happened, and for me to get the feeling to make the movie end the way it did. Those letters are very important, and they convinced me.
I agree. That one of the letters and then the actions immediately after that letter, yes. I totally bought how this character changed and bought that it was authentic. Didn't feel like it was artificial just to get the movie to its end point. So overall, I liked the movie more than I expected to, because I think I'd been reading so much of the pushback from it.
Yeah.
I was kind of expecting not to like this, but I actually really did. I do feel like it's not as good a solid film as the individual interesting parts it's made up of. But that being said, it's still worth a really interesting watch. And I think the characters are really fascinating characters. I like the interplay. I didn't have a problem with the humor and the darkness balancing between them. I felt like that was very well handled. And I think it is always kind of keeping you on your edge. That's probably the way I felt during the whole film, is never quite knew what to expect in the very next scene, whether it was dialogue or whether it was an actual action taking place. There were a lot of surprises in where the film decided to go or the way it handled certain situations. Yeah. So good. So we're all positive on all the films we reviewed. Some a little more than others.
Yeah, I think I'm a little higher on 3 billboards than you are.
You're a little higher on that. You and I are about the same on Lady Bird.
And I think Shape of Water.
Shape of Water about the same. I may be a little higher than In the Fade than you are.
I think you are.
Yeah. Okay, good.
But overall, same page.
Hey, we got 4 really positive films that we're reviewing here and sharing with you. That being said, Chris, before I go to the news item, okay, because we do have news we're going to cover here for a second. I was not here for the Oscar dialogue discussion that you and our guest host, Mary Margaret Baker, had. But given that now I've seen more of the films than you did when you talked about the Academy Awards, we're just going to do one category, and that's Best Picture.
Okay.
Based on what you've seen now, what is your preference? Which one do you think deserves, of the films you've seen, Best Picture? Because I think you've probably seen all but maybe 1 or 2 of them.
But one? As of now, I've seen all of them.
Oh, that's right. As of last night, you did. So now you can accurately tell me, of the 9 films,
are you saying
which one's your
if
favorite?
I could make something win, what would I make?
No, not a one that you think's going to win. I want to know which one you want to see win. Which one do you think should be named Best Picture if you had your way?
Okay, we're going to flip this.
Okay.
Because after I give the answer to that, we're going to move on from this topic and not discuss anything anymore, because it will.
I know where you're going.
So it's going to kind of spoil things.
Okay, that's fine.
So who do I think will win the Oscar for Best Picture? I think it's probably up there with either 3 Billboards or Shape of Water.
That's the 2 I think it's between.
And I think it'll probably be 3 Billboards.
I think it will be 2, just because it's a more important film. If you want to argue that way, I don't necessarily see it that way.
And there's got a lot of support from Golden Globes. So.
And it's just, I think it's driven by Frances McDormand's acting, which we didn't even really talk about, but I thought she was fine. I didn't think, I know she'll probably win Best Actress. That's fine. I think it's playing a cranky curmudgeon, very distraught,
which she's
upset.
done.
And she's done it before. Right. She's got it nailed down. She knows that performance. Seeing her interviews, I kind of think that's how she is, like, naturally. So do I want to see her win? I'm fine with her winning, but I do think there's probably some other more interesting performances out there that I would have liked to seen win.
Sure. So you're talking about Best Actress. I'm like Margot Robbie, but
I like Margot Robbie a lot in I, Tonya. Yeah, we never talked about I, Tonya either. As a movie. Yes, I do feel that way.
So, okay.
So you're saying Three Billboards or Shape of Water you think will win?
Will win. Now, if I could pick, what would I want to win? Believe it or not, a period piece, probably Phantom Thread. And now we have to move on.
Well, this is going to spoil our future conversation about this film, but I am absolutely with you on that.
We're hoping to try to do kind of a more in-depth review of.
So now you know pretty much that our review of Phantom Thread is just going to be gushing positives between the two of us. So go ahead and be prepared for that, to look forward to that in the future. I'm with you. I do think, unfortunately, one of the ones we haven't talked about is the one that I would love to see win. It will not win.
I don't think so.
But I do believe it's deserving because I think it's the best film they've put out this year. So, okay, that being said, let's move on to news.
Okay.
We're going to get away from reviews. Let's talk about future projects. Let's talk about things kind of happening down the road here. And Chris, I just got to do this because we just talked through 4 relatively smaller budget independent films. We got our fix of that for the last 45 minutes.
Right.
So let me switch it to some pop culture.
Blockbuster news.
Blockbuster superhero stuff. Can I do that for just a few minutes? All right. Let's talk about our beloved DC Universe films.
Okay.
And I say that sarcastically. We haven't been a big fan of what they've been doing in that area.
I'm a big fan of a lot of the characters. Just the movies, just for some reason.
Wonder Woman's the only one that's worked.
Right. We both liked Wonder Woman.
So this DC extended universe idea, where they're going to be doing all these films about these standalone stories of characters in this shared universe, kind of using different people to play them and different directors, and just trying to do something a little more interesting. The Joker has always come up as the one that everybody says, we're going to make a Joker movie. We want a Joker origin movie. Okay. Do I think that's a good idea? I don't know. Probably not. But do you know who they've got eyed right now to play? Or have you read this?
I just saw it, I believe, last night. Yep. Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
I mean, I think he's a good actor. For me, he's an interesting choice.
Yes, I completely agree. Not at all. I mean, even looking at it from a physicality standpoint, I don't see it. But
I think he can play crazy and mopey or like depressive and kind of scary. I think he can do that. But, the Joker, I think of, not being funny as in haha, but, just telling jokes like crazy, not the Riddler style, but just, I don't know, something about it I don't see.
It's almost like it might be even going kind of in a more darker position than even the Heath Ledger version in a way, which I think the Heath Ledger version is about as dark and less jokey as you want to go with this character.
Sure.
I'd love to see kind of bringing the character back a little more to its more classic roots style-wise. Joaquin Phoenix was not one I would have picked.
No.
So I've been hearing him for Joker, and then they've also talked about Jake Gyllenhaal being Batman at some point whenever Ben Affleck finally admits that, yes, he's not going to
I'm no longer doing
I'm not going to do this anymore. So I still want John Hamm, and if I had to pick a Joker, I personally think a Tom Hiddleston would be really good if you really wanted to pick somebody that's got an interesting... If he could come
over from the Marvel side
If they let him out of his contract over with Marvel, he'd be interesting.
Somebody I think would be really good, especially for a standalone movie.
Sure.
But I think a lot of people are done with him, and he hasn't done anything in a really long time. But he could definitely get the humor part of it, and he's definitely dark. Jim Carrey.
I think he could. I think Jim Carrey could pull off a really interesting Joker.
And he could put like an origin story of this guy who's kind of weird and kind of has like emotional problems or whatever.
But you're right that I think he's older now, and I don't know if he could pull off an origin younger Joker starting up.
Right.
What about an Adam Driver?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
See, I could see an Adam Driver pulling it off. I'm all for them doing something creative with these characters. They need to do something different than they've been doing these last few films. So I'm all for that. I thought Joaquin Phoenix was a very interesting choice.
So are they going to continue? You say there's an expanded universe versus, I guess, the universe.
I don't know.
So will they continue to do like a storyline that has Jared Leto still playing the Joker, but these expanded ones are somebody like...
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
I think they're grabbing at straws. I really do.
They just know we have these stories. Let's somehow try to get one way that tells them that works.
We're trying to find a hit.
Okay.
We got one with Wonder Woman, so what can we do that's maybe similar to that, or maybe try something different? I don't know. But it's just this whole the whole path they've been following has not been working. So with that, so far,
here's what I'm going to say.
Yep.
Okay, DC, listen up. This is Footcandle's advice. So why don't you take the path of we only do single superhero movies and we don't do any of that? Like, just ditch the Justice League. Forget it. It's not working for you. Don't try to do the video and just do single superheroes. Now, I'm not to say you can't have a cameo to help you promote the next single superhero movie that may be coming out. Just do single superhero movies.
I think they're just too late to the game. That's what their thinking is. I'm not with you. I'm fine with that approach, but I think they're looking back at Marvel's success, and like Marvel had years where they built up their characters before they did their team. DC saying, we got to play catch up. And so they tried to expedite things as quickly as possible, and it's just not working. It's not working, guys.
But maybe going the single route, starting with Joker, maybe that's what they need to do.
Could be. Todd Haynes is the director. I'm sorry, not Todd Haynes.
That would be
that would be awesome.
Okay.
Todd Phillips. Sorry,
okay.
Todd Phillips, not Todd Haynes. Todd Haynes' Joker film would be fascinating
with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Todd Phillips, who I believe
he did like Road Trip and stuff like that.
I think he did The Hangover.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He's done like some broad comedies and all. So yeah. So we'll see. He also, I think the last film he did was a film called War Dogs? Yeah. War Dogs with Jonah Hill. And I never saw it.
Right. I didn't either.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on. You got a story for us?
Yes. So, there again, we're talking big news with blockbusters. So we'd mentioned we're going to have to talk about Star Wars, I guess. But Rian Johnson, they've already said, okay, we're going to give you 3 films. They're not going to have anything to do with this whole Luke Skywalker arc that these 9 have had to do with.
Yep.
It'll be totally separate. We're going to give you 3 films. Well, it was just announced recently that the guys who are the producers and writers of the TV show Game of Thrones, not George R.R. Martin, but the producers that were actually showrunners, the series, they have been commissioned to say, we want you to also do some Star Wars films. They haven't said release date wise, are these going to be before Rian Johnson's or after? How many? But they didn't say. It was kind of a hint that maybe it's going to be 3 as well. But just interesting that they've already attached these guys to kind of helm. And they said not a TV series, but actual movies. They did want these guys doing movies.
So are we talking that there's going to be 2 more trilogies, completely separate storylines?
Conceivably. Yeah.
Separate from the ones we've been following so far.
That's what it seems to be. Kind of crazy that they're, I thought, 3 with Rian Johnson, that's probably good enough. Like, then they add these on. I'm like, whoa. And I don't know if they did this as just kind of trying to soothe people who maybe weren't as crazy about The Last Jedi and thought people changed too much.
I'm just worried that they're maybe spreading themselves a little too thin.
Could be.
With this universe. You've already got these individual films, Solo, and a film called Solo.
Right.
These individual films coming out, and now you've got 2 different trilogies going out. Granted, I know the Star Wars universe is huge. You could have any number of characters and plot lines and styles to it. It's just under this giant umbrella of Star Wars. Like basically anything in space that happens in this galaxy far, far away a long time ago. Right. So you have a big playground to play in. That's cool. It's just I just hope they're... I think right now getting 2 Star Wars films a year is probably even a little maybe much. We're going to get Solo in just 2 or 3 months.
Right.
And Last Jedi was just in December.
Right.
It's interesting.
Not 2 in one calendar year, but it's 2 within.
Well, if Solo
less
had
than a
been
year
on
apart,
schedule, I think it was supposed to be done earlier. I think it got delayed. So I think, there was a chance it would have been 2 in the same calendar year if Solo had come out on schedule.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. I've seen the preview for Solo.
Right.
I'm curious how that's going to be. I have my reservations. I can't say that our boy
Alden Ehrenreich or Harrison.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't say that he bowled me over with even his quick performance in the trailer. So we'll see. I'm really waiting to see. I'm skeptical on this one.
Yeah.
Okay? Plus Mr. Ron Howard. Just the safety choice, so.
I missed the trailer at the Super Bowl, but then you mentioned it to me. I went back and watched it, but you'd warned me of your reservations. I mean, it's a trailer. I mean, did he bowl me over with the bit that he had to do in the trailer? No, but
I just didn't get any
really
sense of charm. I didn't get any sense of charm from him, and that's the whole thing. Han Solo has to be a charming rascal, I just didn't pick that up. So I'm again, I'm not going to judge a film off just solely the trailer.
Sure.
I'm pretty good at waiting to see the film. If anything, it's lowered my expectations. That's probably
Which
a good
is
thing.
a good
I can go
thing.
in with
Right.
a little more of a
Absolutely.
fresh conscience on it. So, all right. So that's Star Wars news. We had to have the obligatory Star Wars update. The last thing, only because there again, I'm just going to keep us in pop culture comic books for just one more news item. Then we can go back to our indie world.
Another Garfield
films.
movie? No.
No. We had the Star Wars which character am I talking about? Was it Star Wars Superman? No, it's Spider-Man. Spider-Man film earlier in the summer, which we both really liked. It was a good superhero film as a standalone film.
Right.
Better than I think you probably expected it to be, and I generally liked it and came in with some pretty high expectations for it. So Sony Pictures technically was the one who made the film, but they had a partnership with Marvel to where Marvel was basically going to be treated as a Marvel film, but Sony still distributed it.
Gotcha.
Sony still owns the rights to Spider-Man and his universe. Okay. So Sony is doing some films.
This must be so confusing for the lawyers.
Yeah. Sony is doing a series of films that are Spider-Man character films that may or may not actually have Spider-Man in them.
Okay.
Which I think is odd.
It's an odd choice.
So the first of those
I think I know where the
coming out is Venom.
Yes.
Venom has a movie that's a Star Wars archenemy in the comics, and we also saw him in Spider-Man 3 with Sam Raimi. Not very successfully in that movie. So there's going to be a standalone Venom movie starring Tom Hardy.
Yes, which I like Tom Hardy.
It's also got Michelle Williams, really good actress in there too. And it's being directed by the guy who did Zombieland. Can't remember his name offhand.
Yeah,
Ruben something.
Something. Yeah.
Sorry.
I know who you're talking about.
Yep. They put out a trailer for it yesterday. And it's interesting. The trailer is a very serious film. It's a kind of a dark film. And we never see Venom one time in it, like as a character, which I'm perfectly okay with. I want us to get back to the days.
It is a teaser.
It is a teaser trailer. I kind of want to get back to the days of Jaws where I don't want to see the shark until build up the anticipation for it. I think we have gotten away from that kind of mentality with films going for just pure spectacle and just kind of drive people into the theater. I'd rather have a little more mystique and intrigue around it. So I'm fine with not seeing a lot of the details yet.
How about if you don't see Venom as the character until the last 5 minutes of the movie? Would you be fine with that?
I need more than 5 minutes. I mean, maybe give like the last 30 minutes. I'll be fine with it, but just build up something. So I'm curious. Again, I don't know how you make characters like this work without the main character that made them happen.
Who's going to fight him?
Being in there.
Just a bunch of police?
Yeah. Is he just going to be kind of an anti-hero and kind of fighting crime on his own? I don't know. So I'm put it solely in the curiosity pile for me. I'm not saying I'm looking forward to it, but I also don't think it's necessarily a disaster yet. I'm very, very curious of where this is going to go project-wise.
Well, I was all excited about Suicide Squad because for some reason growing up, Batman was my favorite comic book character, but I actually liked the bad guys better than the good guys because they usually were more interesting.
Yeah.
So I was really excited for Suicide Squad. We all know how that turned out.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm pretty excited about Venom just because I like
just Tom Hardy.
I'm more excited about Venom than I was about Homecoming coming out. Okay, now I liked Homecoming as a movie, but I just think there's potential. The excitement I had to try to explore a creation of a bad guy with like Suicide Squad and like put them all together. I'm hoping maybe Marvel can get it right. DC kind of messed up. Let's see if Marvel can take bad guy
That's
story
an interesting
arc.
take on it. I'm curious.
Well,
I'm not looking forward to it yet, but I'm just curious how it's going to go.
Here's the other thing.
Yeah.
We talked about DC and the Joker. I've seen so many origin stories of the Joker. I don't know how that could be interesting for me just because, and I read Venom, I'm not as familiar with his origin. I mean, it's like a meteorite and stuff like that. But other than that, I'm not really familiar with it.
Yeah. You don't want to get me on a tear to give you the origin because there's no way they could translate the real origin into this movie.
Oh, really?
None. Absolutely no way.
Okay.
So they're going to have to come up with a modified version of the origin no matter what. Just no way.
Okay.
So
interesting challenge, I guess.
Okay, so that's our news for the episode. Chris, we need to go ahead and bring it on home with our recommendations.
Okay.
This is where Chris and I both share one film that either we caught up with recently or maybe feel like might have been overlooked or maybe it's just worth going back in time to check out and recommend it for our listeners. Chris, what have you got for us today?
Okay. You set it up as a recommendation, but I'm actually going to have two. Okay. And there's a very specific reason. Okay. Alan, how much do you know about National Lampoon?
I know that there was a movie that just came out on Netflix about it, and you watched it.
I liked it.
And you liked it.
I did.
And I know they did Animal House and Vacation. That's about the extent of my knowledge of National Lampoon.
Then I'm going to recommend that you see, and listeners, if you know just as much as Alan does, then I'm going to recommend you see A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which did just come out on Netflix 2018, exclusive film to them. It was at Sundance this year and then went straight to Netflix. I'm going to recommend that movie.
Okay.
I liked it. Thought it was funny. I liked it. Domhnall Gleeson's in it. Domhnall Gleeson and Will Forte play two of the main characters in the movie.
Okay.
Has a lot of cameos. If you're a fan of
Domhnall Gleeson, I mean, he's in a couple films every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Jeez, that guy's everywhere. Okay.
If you like Saturday Night Live, then you would also be interested in watching this as well because it has some history involved. Okay, now, that being said, if you're like, yes, Chris, I know about National Lampoon. I know that the original people was Doug Kinney was the guy who starred. If you know the names of the people who starred the National Lampoon.
I did not.
Okay, good. Then, like you said, you watched A Futile and Stupid Gesture.
I'm good.
Now, for those out there who you're saying, I already know all this stuff. Okay, then I would recommend for you a documentary that came out in 2015 called Drunk, Stoned, Brilliant, and Dead. Kind of the origin of National Lampoon. I would recommend that for you.
Okay.
I will not go into detail why I'm saying, but and then what I did is I watched Futile and Stupid Gesture, saw a bunch of blowback online about people getting really cranky about it, and then I watched a documentary, and I'm glad I watched it that way.
So you're saying the dramatization comedy first, then the documentary.
Correct.
Is the pathway I should take to watch these.
That's the pathway for you. For other people out there, if you know a lot about it already, then maybe you want to watch a documentary, or maybe you want to skip it. You definitely want to skip Futile and Stupid Gesture. I think you'll be really upset. But it's a really interesting comparison between the two. But anyways.
Okay, well, you got me really curious now.
Yeah.
I've seen the film promoted on Netflix, but until I saw that you had logged it as
and you like Will
saw.
Forte, I think.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love sketch comedy. I love, the art of creating comedies. So, yes, I'm looking forward to it. I'll have to watch it.
Okay.
I may even watch it this weekend.
Okay.
Who knows? Great. Okay, so you've got two recommendations. I've just got one. I kept to the
one
rules.
Depending on.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
It's like a twist the plot. Choose your own adventure
Choose your own path.
If you are on this path, go see this one. If not, you go see this one.
Right.
Mine's pretty straightforward. And I am going to mark it completely now as a guilty pleasure.
Oh,
I saw this while I was traveling. It's a film I had meant to catch up with, mainly because of my reaction to this director's latest film that you and I reviewed several months ago.
Okay.
M. Night Shyamalan. We talked about the film Split. We had our review of it.
Okay.
I had never seen The Visit, which is the film he did before Split.
Got you.
It was the one that was kind of considered a little bit of his return to form, kind of a very low budget, had a twist at the end type of deal to it.
It's kind of found footage-y.
Yes, exactly. And I watched it, was not expecting to really enjoy it, and actually found myself kind of digging it on a guilty pleasure kind of way.
Sure.
It's not a great film, but I do think the surprises are well earned.
Okay.
I will admit that I was caught off guard at times.
Okay.
It had enough creepiness to it where it was not a full-blown horror. I mean, I never felt terror from it.
Sure.
I will say the ending several minutes are pretty heavy, traumatic-wise. Actually, to the point I'm surprised they even got a PG-13 rating for some of the end scenes.
Sure.
But I was overall pleasantly surprised with how it was a well built up tension, a suspense movie, did have some interesting reveals that I didn't expect.
Sure.
And overall, I thought it was a good film. So I'm going to put that in my guilty pleasure box.
Okay.
I'm not saying it should have won any awards. It shouldn't have, gotten a lot higher acclaim. It's just, I do think if you're into that kind of film and you were a fan of Shyamalan's early work and you kind of wish you want to see him kind of get back into it.
After the happening, you decide to write him off.
Exactly. I do think between this and Split, he's kind of inching his way back up a little bit. And I'm kind of actually now generally curious to see what he does next with the Glass movie. So I'm actually kind of excited about that. So that's The Visit. Doesn't really have any big names in it. I know that the Catherine Hahn is the mother. It has a small part, but really it's 2 young actors and then 2 older actors playing their parts, and they're really the 4 key components. Just all I'll say is the plot line: 2 siblings become really concerned about their grandparents' behavior while visiting them on vacation. That's it, and it's all done in a not found footage because it's home camcorder shot. The young girl is an aspiring documentary filmmaker, so she is documenting this whole visit, and that's the footage we're watching of the film. So, The Visit from 2015, I believe. Yeah, 2015. So that is our recommendations. Chris had a pair for you depending on your prior knowledge of the subject.
That's right.
Mine is just, get a bag of popcorn and just kind of watch a good guilty pleasure film.
Fair enough.
And, of course, we had all of our reviews: In the Fade, Shape of Water, Lady Bird, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Positive reviews for all 4.
Yes.
I'd say of the 4, probably my favorite of the 4... I will say it's between In the Fade and 3 Billboards.
Okay.
I'm kind of split between those 2. And then I think Shape of Water and Lady Bird are both kind of tied for kind of close second and third positions on those. But overall, very good reviews. I mean,
sure.
You agree? I think 3 Billboards is probably your favorite.
3 Billboards is probably my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah. All were good, but I think if I had to choose one, that'd be it.
Good deal then. Well, we will be back with another episode where we'll probably be wrapping up a little bit of the films from 2017. We may be discussing Phantom Thread. We may be discussing a couple others. At some point, Chris, we are going to have to kind of just throw it out there. What's our favorite films of 2017 and like our one least favorite film. That's kind of keeping with that tradition.
Sure.
We'll probably have to do that before we get too deep into 2018. But you and I are still catching up on some films from 17, as I'm sure most of our audience is too, because a lot of them came out in very limited release late in the year. So, all right. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. This has been a production of The Mesh, which you can find us more about this podcast network on themesh.tv. So you can find all of our back episodes. You can also listen to our episodes, current or past, online through a website, or you can download any of the episodes for your own player of choice, whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a laptop. You can subscribe and listen to all the podcasts and get all the episodes downloaded on demand as you wish. And then if Chris, we have some people who want to chime in with their thoughts or ask some questions, how might they go about doing so?
Send us an email at info@themesh.tv and just mention Footcandle Films in the subject line. Tell us how we were wrong about Lady Bird, and it is the greatest movie of 2017. Or you can, mention any other movie you want us to review. That's probably the best way. Al and I also have accounts on Letterboxd where we kind of every now and then post a review or just mention some other movies that may end up being one of the ones we recommend. So you can follow us on Letterboxd as well. We do have our film festival, which will be coming up September 28th through the 30th. We are accepting submissions right now, so you can go to footcandlefilmfestival.com, and that's where you can, enter submissions if you would like to be considered for our film festival, if you are an aspiring filmmaker.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to that coming up later this year. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you downloading the episode and giving it a listen. We'd love to hear some feedback from you, and if nothing else, we'll definitely talk to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.